why would you even think about owning Bitcoin instead of real estate? Well, it's quite simple, right? What is your purchasing power? So have you calculated your net assets? Have you figured out, assets versus liabilities? Have you looked at what your running costs are, your burn rate, the amount of disposable income that you require each month? How long does your savings stack last for when compared to your costs? Very, very simple kind of wealth management questions that need to be put in mind. And basically, if you're not tracking purchasing power, you're not actually measuring your own wealth. And that's where you get these incredible things where, for example, if you price the S&P 500 in gold, it hasn't gone up. If you want to buy a fine gentleman's suit on Savile Row, it costs you the same amount of gold today as it would have done for a Roman legionary to be a well-dressed gent of Rome. Like, that's crazy. And that's because gold is sound money. And gold is a way of measuring value as well as what we've all been conditioned to think about, which is fiat currencies, the pounds, the euros, the RMB, the US dollar. And when I rewind to 2021, 2022, I'd owned some Bitcoin for some time. 2015, when I first bought some, I'd sold a bunch along the way, but it was very clearly my best performing asset. Is this something that you want to double down on? And my research was just an absolutely roaring yes. Yes, you want to own more of this stuff. And so why do I own what I own? It began this process of looking at the assets I was in control of, how does it compare to Bitcoin? And basically everything sucked in comparison to Bitcoin. It's like you want as much Bitcoin as you can get your hands on. It's like, okay, cool. Well, what does that mean? And in my case, it's like, well, actually, hang on. What's this real estate that I own? Okay, and we had some problems with the house that we were in, and I won't go into all the details of why. But long story short, my wife and I, driven by me entirely, this is a better bet for us financially long term. Let's do it. She jumped on for the ride, and what an amazing partner in life Loz is. So shout out to her for even willing to take that risk and to back my conviction in a sense. But it's like, what's the fastest horse in the race when it comes to capital protection and capital growth, combined with what's the risk? And Bitcoin just wins on all of these kind of metrics. But the flip side of it is you can't live in a Bitcoin. It's super simple. Yes, it's a digital money that you can take anywhere in your head. That's incredible. But physical shelter is something that it doesn't give you. And so, believe it or not, since we actually sold that previous house in 2022, we've had 2 more children. So we have 3 kids, basically 5 and younger. And I calculated we have moved 15 times in 3 years. Now that includes a shift from basically within Melbourne, and then Melbourne we moved up to Byron Bay for a bit, and then we went on a couple of holidays, and then now we're back in Melbourne and looking here. 15 times I've had to pack suitcases, figure out what are we taking with us, what's going into storage, what do we not need, and it is absolutely exhausting. So on the one hand, you've had extraordinary financial success from the decision we made, 5 times your money with a very low risk profile. That is unbelievable. If you can find me a better performance than that anywhere else, let me know. It's one of the reasons why I'm such a big Bitcoin advocate, right? Is you see your purchasing power surge over this 3-year period. It opens up other opportunities. Okay, cool. Well, this is interesting, but what it's highlighted next is this reality of, okay, let's just rent. Well, you're then basically someone else controls your space. A landlord of some form, or an Airbnb, short-term rental, whatever it might be. And it made me realize that when you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food and shelter at the very bottom, right? Well, what selling your house and buying Bitcoin means is you're back in that first stage again at least once a year. So if you sign a 12-month contract, the contract's coming to an end, the landlord doesn't want to renew it. Well, what do? You've got to find shelter again. And in our case, we've done that 15 times. And for whatever reason, we've had tons of lessons crop up from the properties that we've lived in. And I'll get onto that later. But it's so interesting, isn't it? When you're figuring out shelter, I feel like I'm, the phrase that, often a business owner wants to be working on their business rather than in their business. It's like I've been working in my family rather than on my family because of this need to constantly figure out where are we going to be in a couple of weeks' time. The rental market's been interesting. It's very, very expensive. It opens up the discussion on migration here to Australia. There's a lack of supply, and the quality is just really pretty poor. And so what's happened is it's like, okay, 3 years has gone by. we've kicked the targets that we set as a financial return, and we're just completely over this process of living out of suitcases. And we want to reallocate some of our increased purchasing power back into physical real estate. And what I want to run you through here is the process that I'm building to look for an appropriate property. And something I really feel strongly about is, when the information changes, so should you. I.e., when you learn new things, if you haven't reconsidered what your previous lens on the world was, then is that intelligence? And there's a number of different examples of this. I'm not going to go into that now, but what I'm trying to do is build a due diligence process for a physical real estate purchase that removes the emotion and also increases the ability to make a really great investment that covers not just financial returns, but also the wider picture of the humanistic capital that I'm managing, and also the intellectual capital. So what can I learn on the way through? What might be something I want in the future, but also how do I continue to foster my humanistic capital, make sure my kids have a good life, give them somewhere to be stable from? And so it throws up tons of different things. In some ways, I've made the process of finding myself a property incredibly difficult, because to actually tick all the boxes is really, really, really hard.